All right. Welcome, Stephanie. We are so excited to have you on. I feel like I already know you, but I'm so excited to have you here and to share this amazing protocol with all of our listeners, Rapid Rewire Method. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's been so fun connecting with you and your mom already. So I've been really excited for this conversation.
Yeah,
I know. What people don't know yet is that
it was such a fun.
And what people don't really know. Oh, we're in it. It was super fun. So for our listeners, Stephanie did a demo of this method, which was really amazing because I didn't know this could be done with both of us together on the Zoom. So it was amazing and just combined so many different protocols and techniques into this really one concise method. I was really blown away. So would just love to get into it. And maybe Stephanie, give a little bit of a story about how you found Rapid Rewire Method. I think that's really fascinating, your story.
Yeah, so I have been in the personal development space for about 14. So I've been in the personal development field for about 14 years now. So for 12 of those years, I was working and facilitating with people one-on-one, in groups, in retreat settings, even inside of 3 different treatment centers, 2 addiction rehabs, and also inside of a treatment center with women with borderline personality disorder and bipolar. And I have always loved to skill stack. I really believe that especially if we are privileged enough to work with people on their mental and emotional well-being, you better know what you're doing. And so I was on a voracious hunt of always trying to understand and learn the most, for me, the most effective and really integrative tools out there. And because I am Asian and it's drilled into us on on speed, I was also looking for the fastest tools out there, just because I'm like, why have people suffer any longer than they need to? What if we can find ways to liberate people quickly and efficiently and integratively, which means that they don't also have to keep going back to process the problem or the issue or the negative past experience or the trauma over and over and over again. So I, over those years, trained in NLP, hypnosis, somatic experiencing, TRE, havening, breath work, you name it. It was getting into the mind and into the body, all of it, girl. And every time I found something that was effective, I was like, yes, that. And I've also experienced a lot of it as a client, even if I wasn't trained in it, just because, again, I felt, it's my job. I should know what's out there. And yet, I got pregnant actually at 43 years old without trying with my partner. And I really wanted to be a mom of my own biological child. I have 2 wonderful stepkids, but I've always felt, I want to be a mom. And so when we weren't planning or preparing for a child and this little spirit child came through, I was so elated. I was like, oh my gosh, my little miracle baby, she wants to come through. This is it. And at 9.5 weeks, I lost the child. So I went into a really, really dark hole, and rightfully so. And I know grief. I've had people close to me pass. I've had pets pass. And I've also had heartbreak grief. I've experienced grief in many different forms. And yet something was different this time around, because over time, instead of just having moments of waves of sadness and just reminders of, the loss, I was starting to become non-functioning even more intensely over time. So not only was I constantly stuck in these loops of grief, I had days where I didn't even want to get out of bed. I was having suicidal ideation. I couldn't look at social media because everyone I felt was announcing they were pregnant in 2021. If I was outside and I saw a pregnant woman or a child playing or someone holding a baby, I would start crying uncontrollably and unconsolably. And sometimes in public places, it's not the best to do that when you're just trying to buy your groceries and I'm sobbing in the aisles. So I knew that I really needed help. And even with all the tools I'd been trained in, even with an extraordinary community of coaches, healers, therapists, and shamans that I've, accumulated over time, I was still getting worse. And I ended up getting introduced to the Rapid Rewire Method tools, and literally in one process, not the ones that you ladies experience, but with our trauma release tool, process the trauma of the miscarriage, drain the emotional charge that literally after, I wasn't watching the clock at the time, but it was a 60-minute session. In that span of time, by the end of it, I couldn't feel or find sadness or grief in my body anymore. It was gone. And I was floored because I'm like, hold on. I know the fastest, baddest, most efficient.
Yeah,
tool.
right. Yeah.
What did you just do to me? And can we keep going? And so I continue to learn these tools that are the Rapid Rewire Method.
Yeah.
It's a whole suite of protocols. And as I learned them, I was like, gosh, they're so easy, but they work so well. They work so efficiently with the mind, the emotions, and the body in a way that a memory or an experience is stored, that I literally was so floored by this. I'm like, this is the wave of the future. This is what we need. Not only that, because they're so simple and for the most part easy to apply. It depends on the person who's receiving it, right? Because we're all different in the way that we process. But anyone can essentially learn them. And so I know it's hard to find a good practitioner sometimes, right? Someone who can really actually help you, or what modality helps or doesn't. And also how can we also be empowered to liberate ourselves when we need to. And so that's what I love about these protocols is you can use them on yourself. You can use them with someone else. You can use them in a group, like I facilitated the two of you. They're very simple. It's not rocket science. I mean, you could probably do it after you experienced it that one time from me, right? But I feel like that's what we need is something that's simple yet effective. Like we can't use complexity anymore. And I honestly feel like at this time and this stage of the world, we don't have a lot of time for people to sit in their, pain, in their suffering for longer than they have been. So that's the long story of how I got to these, but I am
Stephanie,
obsessed.
I love your story because it's always so much more effective, isn't it? When we can work on our own healing and then you know exactly how that's going to be with clients. So, and congratulations on healing that as you did and telling your story because it's so impactful. And I'm wondering if you see it work just as well as it did with you with any other problems that client have. So can you tell us some of the reasons why people come to you to work with this method?
Yeah. So, we have people who brand new coaches or therapists, practitioners, people who work with someone else to support them in their mental and emotional well-being. They come because, if they're like me and they want a skill stack, they want to learn tools to really help their clients because it's not a one size fits all. Sometimes certain, tools, techniques, protocols work really well with some, and in others it doesn't work as well. And so I think people come to us, one, because they also know what our tools can do in such a short amount of time, whether they're new or experienced. We even had last year an NLP trainer come through our work, and he was like, what is this? Even based on, NLP also works really well. And then we have folks who maybe are not working in the profession of supporting other people in their mental, emotional well-being, but they're like, hey, I want to be able to have full capability to help myself anytime, any place, with anything. Now, can we say anything and everything? No, we don't like to make those claims because there could be some things that are so big and so deep that it's harder to walk yourself through it, especially if one of your survival mechanisms is to repress or disassociate, right? You might need a trained professional to help you. But for the most part, if someone's struggling with any sort of problems, deserving identity, any sort of limiting beliefs, inner barriers to goals, negative past experiences that they cannot let go of, our tools can work for that. And it has, and we've literally seen people in a very short amount of time learn these tools. And the moment they learn them, they go use them and they get results immediately and consistently every time they use them, and with themselves or with another person. Because part of our training is to self-process. We're like, it's so important to have that power within you. Like if it's 4 a.m. and you're struggling and you're, in a very dysregulated emotional state and you cannot call a professional to help you, who can you turn to? Yourself. And that's what we're
Mhm.
enabling people to be able to do through the protocols that we share. And then also to be able to help other people as well with them.
Yeah, I think it's such an empowering tool for self. I remember, like, after experiencing the protocol, I've been able to really use it in future scenarios and walk myself through it. And so I think it's amazing that it's something that you can also guide yourself. It's just fascinating. Could you share a little bit about what the protocol is, or what people can expect? Because for myself, I find it's a really cool way to bring the subconscious forward in a really quick
Yeah.
way through the levels of awareness. But you can kind of elaborate more on what it looks like for people.
Yeah. So these tools were built to work, as I mentioned before, with the mind, the emotions, and somatic with the body.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so simple. It almost seems like I don't understand how that works. Like
For
you
real.
ladies went through
Yeah.
it. You're like, come on, really? I'm just writing sentences and then reflecting on the content that comes up. There's no way this is going to work and help me break through something I've been struggling with for years. And yet it does work. And so we have multiple protocols. Some are more shallow and simple that can just get the job done really quick. And then some that go way deeper, like the one I experienced, and others who've gone through like the big T trauma that need a more robust protocol. But even with our more simple ones, they still work. And how they're written or how they're created is that they're able to prompt the participant in such a way that they can start to share deeper truths of what is holding this problem in place. It's very simple. Even the format is just tell me before the prompt, and that has somebody go to a different part of their brain to start to access information and to feel into their issue in a whole different way. I know it seems so simple, but that's one of the ways of how it works. And the more you ask that in that format, whatever comes after the tell me, it starts to elicit and have the unconscious content arise. And people get really surprised where they're like, what? Of what's
Yeah.
coming up. I thought I have to take people into hypnosis. I used to be a hypnotist in order to do like age regression and bring them back to have these memories arise. No, we can access it when we are prompted in a way that is structured for the mind and to be able to grab the content that is in the unconscious or subconscious, right? And then how the prompts are also created is to process it through the images, the thoughts, the emotions, and the body sensations. We call those the 4 elements or the 4 levels of awareness in which a memory or an experience is stored. There are some tools out there that are just cognitive based, right? It's just like the thought, like CBT. And then there's some that are just emotion focused. And then there's some that are just somatic based. Like even for me, when I was trained in breathwork, it really is the body. You can't pinpoint. You're not going after the thought, the image. You're going more for the body sensation, right? And so with this, it accesses and starts to integrate all 4 levels of awareness, which is why it works so quickly. And other tools work too. So, again, I'm trained in other modalities, but they don't utilize all 4. So it might take a lot longer, or sometimes, maybe parts of it have diminished, but then it comes back up again and you're like, oh, I thought I processed this. Why am I having to deal with this over and over again? It hasn't been fully integrated.
Yeah.
And, over time, if you run it
So
more
I'm
with other
curious,
protocols, you can,
Stephanie,
oh,
because you did bring up the hypnosis piece, and I know you're trained in the hypnosis. And Sarah and I were talking about this because we love hypnosis, with NLP and regression. And so we were wondering if you used this method with the 4 areas actually with someone in hypnosis, and they access their higher self, would it look exactly the same, or do you feel it could be accelerated even or deepened in that level of hypnosis?
potentially. I mean, it's in the way, again, that these protocols are structured. It's not just the 4 elements that, oh, if I take that and I put it into a hypnotic process, will it work? Hypnosis has so many different paths. I mean, I remember I've done multiple trainings, and even one of them was a full year long to understand all the different ways that you can work with it. This is very straightforward. The way that the elements are embedded into our protocols are for a very specific reason, and that's why it works in the way it is. If we were to extract that and try to just put 4 elements of awareness into hypnosis, It may or may not work. It depends on, are you doing imagery? Are you doing, like, there's so many ways of working with the mind while in, that hypnotic state. How can we ensure that it works when it's not built into the structure of it? So I'm going to guess it probably can, but I'm already trying to think, like, how would I do that? It still would be in the ways that you'd have to elicit the answers while in a trance state, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so I would have to probably think a little bit more harder and longer versus just like a spontaneous answer right now of like, how could that work?
Sure.
But it's not built into the structure of hypnosis at the moment. So in what pathway, when you have someone in state and you're doing a process on them, can you embed those 4 elements in? That's something that would have to be, I'd have to figure it out, I guess. But I could tell you right off the bat.
Well, it's interesting. And I was really surprised. So Mom and I did a demo with you, and it surprised me how quickly I got into like a felt sense around my original problem. And I'll share, like, I've talked about my father in a lot of these podcasts, but it was, again, bringing up an issue with my father and around feeling unwanted, right? Feeling uncertain in relationships based on my childhood. And it was powerful. And it got the images that came through and the thoughts and the emotions that kept moving forward around it created a lot of feelings within my body. I remember tearing up, and we were on mute. You were guiding us through it. We were each having our own experience, and it was really powerful. And I got to grieving my father. I got to an imagery of, I think I shared when I was with you guys, this final image that moved me from a sense of like devastation and feeling unwanted into a space of connection. I saw this image of me and my younger self and young dad and soul dad all hanging out, holding hands. And I had this feeling of connection and empathy for him, for who he was as a young boy and his parenting. And I got to a really compassionate space. And I loved how then it was able to expand. And I will tell you, I've had a lot of release from that area. So we did this probably like maybe like 3 weeks ago at this point. And I've had some spaces in my relationship where it could have come up that I was feeling abandoned, but it didn't go there. And I had a friend kind of call me on that. She was like, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "Well, not abandoned. Like, I'm not taking it personally. I can see what's going on in the relationship, but it's not about me." And I could see it so clearly, and it didn't feel like any kind of personal attack. I had such a different level of awareness around it and not that feeling. And I was like, oh my gosh, it worked.
I know. It's crazy. That's what I'm talking about sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I was first in the tools, I'm like, there's no way. Like, what? And even when we've shifted everything virtually right now, we do still have some in-person trainings, but it's very small. But before, how we used to run our trainings is in person. And there were people who would come. They would learn the tools for the very first time. Literally, we're handing them the scripts of the different protocols they were going to learn. And then they went ahead and we would show them the script. We would do a quick demo so they could see how it works. And they were like, great, pair up and go like work on a problem. And people were coming back after their sessions with each other, sharing huge things. One of our most simple processes, it's literally 2 questions. There was a woman who came to our training who actually, she said, she's like, I'm not really sure if I want to come to like facilitate another. She's like, I really just need my own healing. And I'm like, well, the way that our training is structured is you do have to give and you do get to receive. But the good thing is by giving, it's very simple. You're literally just asking questions and they are doing all the work. So she agreed, she came, and with our most simple tool, she's been grieving her mother for 17 years. It has been something she has not been able to let go of. It has really impacted her life in many different ways. And the next day, she reported, she's like, yesterday, literally, something shifted with my mom. I don't feel grief around her anymore. She goes, and it's wild because when we continued to do exercises the rest of the day, people kept saying to me, you remind me of my mother, or like, you have such motherly energy, or you feel like mama vibes to me. She's 26 years old. It's not like she,
Oh.
you know, sometimes you could look at someone, right? And like maybe if they're more maternal and older, then you'd be like, wow, I feel very mothering or motherly because you're older. But she's a young woman. And she said people kept saying that to her. And she goes, I've never gotten that before. And it was wild. But she said she literally felt her spirit merge with her mom's at the end of the process. And then this has been the external reflection she was receiving. The person who facilitated her used it for the very first time,
Cool.
you know? And it's like wild how these work. So to what you said, Sarah, I'm like, what? I don't get it sometimes. And yet I trust the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And my experience was so fascinating, Stephanie, because, you know, thinking of what did I want to work on? I have this one area that I have fear associated, and it's driving in the car with somebody
Mom in the
driving with
car.
someone else driving the car, and if there's speed involved, passing big trucks. This is all areas that I have felt fearful of. And what I loved so much was, you know, was the come up with the symbol, you know, as we were working through everything. And I literally, you know, it's amazing. The mind is so amazing. But, you know, I visualized immediately, you know, this huge brick wall and, you know, and what could look different. And it just shattered down and balloons came up. And so when I was driving in the car that next day with my husband, we had like a 3-hour trip, and I kept visualizing, closing my eyes and seeing the wall falling down and the balloons, and everything was great. And then all of a sudden it started shifting, and I wasn't afraid. I felt annoyed with him for not driving slower. And I remember I had emailed you that, and like all the fear was gone. I'm like, no, there's balloons and walls down. No, but now I'm just annoyed. Now I'm more annoyed. And your response was, you want to share what that was, what you said?
What did I say to you? Do you remember?
That was the trauma response.
Totally.
Yeah.
The fear is trauma response. Yeah.
And then I went under it. And so that is, I'm assuming, you know, and you said, yeah, you can go back and work on the annoyed now. And, you know, because there's so many layers, there's just so many layers. And I'm sure you find this with everyone you work with, correct?
Yeah. Sometimes it does come up and other times it's literally just integrated, right? So for me, the miscarriage was so huge and I swore like there's no way it could be just done right now. And it was, and people have bigger emotional reactions than I do when I share the story even. And so similar for you, it's like what's so neat for what happened with UPD is fear is debilitating, right? It had you not even want to get in the car. It had you feel unsafe. Annoyance, you can work with that.
Totally.
It is a very active energy that is more empowering to me than like being in fear. So yay, we made some progress there, right? And so now, you know, you just got to get your man to slow down when he drives, but you're not afraid to be in the car with him or anyone else anymore if you're not in control. So that to me is a success. And we can always process little bits too of annoyance.
I know. That was great.
It makes a lot of sense when I do a lot of trauma clearings. The anxiety, the feeling of helplessness, the feeling of terror get lifted, and then really very valid feelings come through of anger, sadness, or something else, annoyance comes through that has not been able to be shown because the trauma was just overlaying everything. And so when you share them, I was like, oh yeah, you're annoyed. That makes sense.
Is it just in the car that you get annoyed or with him?
There's probably a couple other places I could get annoyed with him. Yeah, that's an interesting crossover, but it's the car where it stands out, where that has felt the most traumatic to me, not the other places. So yeah, it's interesting. No, it's a valid question.
Which maybe in a car is a space that you don't have a lot of control to do anything else besides just be annoyed, right? In other areas of your life, you can have more action-oriented steps. But in a car, you're kind of just like, passenger, here you are. Okay, what can I do? I can be annoyed.
Yes, I know. So I'd love to know, Stephanie, what is the science behind this protocol? Because, and you did say it wasn't you that came up with this. So you are the teacher of this and you share all of this. But Can you tell us a little about the science behind the protocol?
Yeah, so I love giving credit where credit is due. These tools were created by a researcher and psychotherapist of 40 years. His name was Ivorad Slavinsky. He was in Yugoslavia, and he actually passed away a couple years ago, but we have the blessing from his estate to carry on his work. And it's a bit more prevalent in like Eastern Europe, but it's newer to coming to the United States, even though it's been around for a long time. But Ivorad wasn't a marketer. He wasn't an entrepreneur. So it wasn't like he was out pushing this. But for me, I'm like, oh gosh, people need it. So we are, really doing our best to get this in the hands of the masses. And the way that Zivrad, I really wish he was still alive so I can ask him deeper questions and how his mind works, because he's brilliant. We call him a grand synthesizer. He was just so good at crafting protocols that, again, worked efficiently with the mind, the emotions, and the body. Some of the mechanics that are underneath this is a process of duplication. When we can actually experience something, when you experience it enough times, it begins to lose its power, right? So if I told you a joke and you laughed out loud, so funny, crying, so, maybe even pee your pants a little, and then I tell it again, and then you're like, oh, yeah, pretty funny. And then you tell it again, and eventually you're like, okay, that's not really funny anymore. It loses its impact when you're able to actually have the experience of the thing that you maybe weren't able to feel because you've repressed it, you've disassociated from it, or you've blocked it in some way, or it's not safe to feel those emotions. So we just find our ways to cope to push it out. Well, these tools bring it up. As you saw, there were images that you're like, what? Well, that was stored away. Or an emotion that you didn't even realize, Sarah, that was tethered to this abandonment stuff that began to come up. And so with these tools, again, the way that they're structured, it enables this content, this unconscious content, to arise so that we can experience it, which then has it lose its power. When it is tethered and stuck and in away from our unconscious, we cannot experience it, which means we cannot release it. And so that's the process of duplication. When we're able to bring it up, experience it, let it go. Bring it up, experience it, let it go. It begins to diminish the charge, which is why there's so much repetition in our work as well, which you experienced, right? We kept going in. Also, another way that the structure works, which is very similar to what I just said, is when you're able to put your attention to the problem, allow the content to arise, whether it's in the form of an image, a thought, an emotion, or a body sensation. You allow yourself to experience, but then you can also articulate it clearly what it was that you experienced. That's all the steps of what really makes our tools work. Is they're structured to enable that to occur, which is why they work so well. Now, we also have tools. These, I cannot tell you how this works, but we even have protocols that can take you into the non-dual state, like where you are in oneness or in that state of pleroma, like the grace of God. And you don't need to drink ayahuasca or lick a frog or do any of that stuff. And you can get to that same exact place utilizing our tools. That is beyond my comprehension at the moment. I probably have to dig in and figure out what is working behind that to allow someone to go into that oneness state simply through this process of questioning and asking as well, which is wild. But what I just shared with you is kind of the foundational pieces of what is happening underneath the protocols and why they work the way they do.
That's so interesting.
Yes.
So you've experienced that state of oneness through the protocol?
Oh yeah, many times.
Can you share what that is like and what you feel in that state?
It's the state of pure bliss.
Yeah.
Oneness. It's quiet. People can describe it as tranquility, or a state of pure love or peace, serenity. It's just, it's so interesting. Like, how do you describe it? That's how I would describe it. It's just peace poured over you. There's no attachment to anything. You just are. It's like pure state of presence, but in the presence of this peace, bliss, love, grace of God. It's exquisite to be there. And it's neat because one of our protocols will literally get someone into that state. And then once they're there, we have them reflect back onto their problem. And usually when you're in that vantage point, that's one of the unique things about these tools that I haven't seen anything else. You have a very different perspective. when you're in like that soul spiritual state, to look back on your problem and be like, it's really not a problem. Like we make it out to be way bigger than it is.
Yeah.
Or we're holding on to it for some reason that isn't for our highest good. And we can let go once we see what the gift of that is for us, right? And so that's what's so neat is we take people into that state, one, to experience that, but when you're reflecting back onto your problem, it transforms it because you can really see it from a whole different place of no judgment, of pure just like love and compassion.
Yeah, you're in like a zoomed out witness seat and you're seeing it through this like spiritual lens.
Correct.
That allows the problem to really minimize. So it's neat, Mom. It's almost like when a regression between sides. Like
I was just going to say that, Sarah.
Yeah,
Literally,
like a
I was
between,
just, yep, the
a
space
between life
between life.
regression.
It sounds, because you are in this state of bliss and you are in oneness, and many sit at the feet of God or Jesus and feel in this oneness, and then they reflect as they go to their soul contract why they created all of this for this lifetime, and all of those answers drop in. So it's fascinating because it sounds like such a similar space. And it's so interesting, the many ways, the many pathways that you can get to all of this. It's so interesting. Yeah. I love it. I really do love it. Yeah. Yeah. You know,
But you're
I
right.
was
Something
reading.
with this method is like that it's so effective. I think that the timeliness of it and how quickly you can access it is something that I haven't felt in many other protocols.
Yeah, and look, I love hypnosis so much. Trust me, that was one of the main tools that I used. But the challenge that I found with that is it's not always the easiest to really get good results when you're in self-hypnosis, like ones that literally you feel a shift and you're complete. I would always have to keep going back into like if I was doing it on myself. The other bit is you don't need perfect conditions. If you're in a loud airplane and the person next to you is freaking out, you can't ask the airplane to shut up, and so you'd be in a quiet space, right, to bring that person into that hypnotic state so that you can do the work with them. Like this is these you don't need the perfect conditions for them to work. You can start and stop it. We've had practitioners start and then they had to go off and then someone else came in and finished it, but it's just because it's a standardized protocol. Like it's step 1 through step 6 or 8, however many, depending on the process, that someone can just follow along and get you there to the result. So, I mean, it's just mind blowing what these can do and how robust they are. And also, I don't want to use the word completely foolproof, but they seem I've just been able to guarantee better results for my clients when I use them. Now, I don't really process people as much anymore. I'm, building a company, but even when I have done it on the people I love, or like these two that I now newly love, you two, it's easy for me to be able to facilitate someone and have a very clear pathway on how to do that.
Yeah. So this is your entrepreneur side now. You're building this company, you're building this business. And I was reading some of the things about you and I loved, so you said, and I have to repeat this to understand it a little bit better. I wrote it down. Being a successful, high achieving person who gets stuck is so frustrating. And I found that to be that sounds very personal, Stephanie. Was that coming from a personal space for you?
Yes, I don't know where you read that online because there's been a lot of weird or just different things I've said all over the place. But yeah, of course, I mean, I joke, but I'm very serious. The Asian culture has a very specific way of conditioning their people, and it's for achievement. And then many of us of this culture have the belief that my achievements equal my worth. And so now if I'm hitting up against blocks, if I'm feeling stuck, if I'm not moving as fast as I thought I should be, in my progress building my company, you can get into those states of that's what feels stuck. And then that equals then I'm not achieving, which then means I'm not worth anything. Crap, I can't feel that. So then what do I do? And it's it's a trap. And so fortunately, I don't feel that way anymore. That's why I'm like, where did you read that? Because I'm gonna guess it's not like the newest publication somewhere. Because
No, it
fortunately,
was
I
a
do
couple
have.
years ago. A couple years ago, you said it. Yeah. Yeah. About 2
I missed
years
that.
ago. Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago you said it.
Oh, it was a couple years. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. I was like, dang, did I say this? Yeah, of course. A couple years ago, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
fortunately, I have the capability of getting myself out now. And also my co-founder, who's wonderful, Wesley, he's a master trainer of these tools. He's literally on speed dial if I need him. I'm like, Wesley, he'll be able to get me unstuck. And I have such a massive passion now with building this. I mean, I was an entrepreneur even when I was building my personal brand. But with Rapid Rewire, building this company is a whole different beast. And it's something that I am unapologetic about. I am so passionate about. And it's all because I believe in these tools with all of my heart, soul, and being. And I really know that this is going to contribute to supporting humanity with healing, with transformation, and for people just to be able to feel more free than they actually do in their life and more empowered.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can see your passion. I think when people experience something like your level of grief and to find this healing that you couldn't find anywhere else, I think that creates such motivation and passion to be able to share with people the power of these tools. And I can see your passion and feel it, and your desire to, like, the more people know about it, the quicker they can heal. Which, Mom, when I started the practice, right, that's why I said, I just want to heal people really quick. Like, we don't need to be in this suffering so long. Like, there has to be tools out there that can move through people faster. I was like, this old school protocol of like 10, 20 years of therapy is like, it's hard sometimes. So it's exciting for me to hear and to experience some of these like different tools. And I love this idea of like skill stacking, because I think there is different modalities that heal in different ways. And this one is just one I'm excited to add to my toolbox for sure.
Yeah, totally. And again, there's so many amazing things out there. And I think just the fact of people want to learn them and are willing to put themselves in the fire and face off with themselves to do the work, to heal, to transform, to evolve, to grow is massive. So whatever path they choose to take with that, like, that's huge. And then finding the thing that works for you, right? It's not for everybody. Some people, we've gotten some pushback from folks saying, it's unethical to say that you can heal trauma in 60 minutes or less. And I was like, well, we have evidence to prove it. Literally video footage of people.
It's also a limiting belief, right?
Correct. Yeah. And it's how people have been indoctrinated into the way that they're thinking of how it's supposed to be. I mean, like old school, but in common example, when people talk about the 4-minute mile, they're like, no one can ever run that. And then one man broke it. And then now all of a sudden everybody else can do it. So it's the same thing when we have to adopt a new paradigm, is somebody has to prove that it's possible. And then people start to come on board. And for those who want slow and steady, perfect. We're not for you. But if you're going, hey, I really want to break through this and I need relief. I need to get back to functioning. I need to get back to my own zone of genius. I need to get out of this stuckness in my entrepreneurship, because crap, I've got to pay my bills or whatever it is for those, who get stuck in that. You need something a bit quicker. And it's wild because even we have a woman, she's a licensed clinical social worker. She's one of our star students, and she is now replacing the EMDR therapist in her group practice because, she says it also takes too long for the setup with EMDR. And then not only that, but sometimes they come to their EMDR sessions so dysregulated they can't do the work. And so they get sent to Anna. Anna patches them right up really quick and they go back to their EMDR therapist, but they're about to let them go. And she's starting to do all the trauma work in her practice.
That's really great.
Yeah, our level 2 tools. So it's pretty neat to see like people where she's more clinically trained, that she decided to get curious and dive into the pool with us, and then now found, a more efficient way for her to be able to help her clients as well, which is something that we're so proud of and we love. And, my passion isn't just based on my own personal experience. It's based on watching the people who are learning these tools get extraordinary results for themselves, for their clients, or people that they love in their community. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And you are actually doing a really great offering for our Therapy Unfiltered listeners, where people who are listening can go on, follow the link in the show notes, and experience this for themselves.
They sure can.
Free of charge. There's a video to follow, and you can experience the protocol, because it is that simple, that effective, and to be able to create the healing. I think it's just amazing that that's the offering.
Yeah. It's essentially what they are going to experience. I wanted to run the two of you on a process that I knew if we were going to be presenting to your audience, that you would understand how to explain it, and then they would also get to have a similar experience. The freebie is essentially the exact protocol I ran on both of you. We also had facilitated that in a group, so it'll feel like you're in a group with Wesley, our master trainer, facilitating you when you listen to the freebie. I think the one right now, we probably have to switch it. It's around a limiting belief.
That's awesome. That's great.
But we're going to work it so that it can be around a specific problem. In case someone's like, I have a deeper thing I'd rather work on versus just a limiting belief. So yeah, download it, have your own experience of the work, because I think that that's going to be the most important, right? We could talk about it all day long, but until someone actually has their own direct experience, that's what's going to make the biggest difference for them.
Yeah. Once you feel it and you experience the shift, then you know it works.
Yeah. So Stephanie, what's next for you in the Rapid Rewire Method? Where are you going next with all of this? What's the plan?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of fun things in the works. We're literally supercharging our marketing right now. We have some extraordinary affiliates that are sending out all of our work on our behalf because they've experienced it, they believe in it, it's complementary to what they're doing. So I think that's really going to push us quickly. We also just are partnering with a woman who has a prison program. She was incarcerated herself. She said that, actually prison changed her life, because when she got arrested and put into prison, she found out she was pregnant. And instead of following the path she was on, she got some course correction while inside of prison, and she became a top salesperson at a major, major company. And so her work now is, how can we help people to transform, build those soft skills, and be able to get work after they are released. And it's neat because her program that we are a part of, we're doing the personal healing side. It's for the people who have their final sentence of being in prison. So they're working on themselves right before they get released to improve their chances of really acclimating back into society and reducing recidivism, which is really extraordinary. And it's very exciting to be a part of that mission alongside of her.
That is an extraordinary next step. I think that will create a lot of healing in the world. I mean, to be entering in with the prisons and to create that shift, that's powerful. That's huge. That's a lot of healing. That's not, I've worked with some friends who go in and do yoga and mindset, but this is healing a lot of root cause and trauma for people in there. Instead of just like gaining skills to cope, it's actually it's deep healing. That's amazing.
Yeah. And more. This is just the beginning. So we're going to try
to
wiggle into all those places and collaborate with, a lot of folks who have audiences that we could really deeply serve with our tools. So it's really fun and exciting. We're only a couple years in, and I can't wait to see where we end up in 5 or 10.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Cutting edge stuff. Yeah, I love it. Well, Thank you so much for taking time and coming on and sharing all of this. I mean, and taking the time to do the protocol with Sarah and I was absolutely wonderful, because until you
Powerful.
experience it, it's so hard to understand how it could create that level of healing. So wonderfully pivoting. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
so appreciate you and all the
Yeah,
good work.
I appreciate you ladies so much. It's so wonderful to be connected. You are both such a joy to be around, and what a blessing, mom-daughter connection that you have. So I love it.
Oh.
Aw. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for the work you do and for helping me heal some of my little childhood wounds in there. I appreciate it.
Doing it.
Forever
Thanks for
grateful
trusting
doing
me.
it. Oh, all day, all day. Love it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.